8:30 a.m. We're calling the meeting to order, and I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And just would like to make you aware that proper notice has been given as required under the ORC 121.22 codes. And we're going to start first with approval of the board meetings minutes from August the 3rd and the 4th. I have reviewed those as well, so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve those unless you have any changes or additions.
I have nothing. I'll move approval of the board meeting minutes as presented in our packet.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you very much. The next board item is approve the special election provisional ballot report.
Yes.
Sherry, you want to give us an update on that?
Sure. You have in your packet a summary staff recommendation from the August 4th special election. There were a total of 8 provisional ballots issued in that election. Bipartisan teams reviewed the information contained on the provisional envelopes per Secretary of State directive and board policy. And staff is recommending to accept 7 of those provisional ballots and to reject 1 because that voter was not registered timely.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion that we approve the special election provisional ballot report.
I'll second.
We have to do just by way of discussion, but also we have to do the rejected categories one at a time, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
I just have a question for the individual that was not accepted because they were not registered to vote. Was notification given to that person as to why, or do we do that, or is that just?
The voter is given a hotline form at the time that they cast the provisional ballot, and it has the phone number in which the voter can contact the board to find out whether or not their provisional was counted. So the voters provided that information. And then the provisional envelope does serve as a registration form to register the voter for the November election. So the voter will be sent an acknowledgement notice based on that as well.
Okay, I'm so glad you clarified that because that was a question I was going to raise today, and I didn't have to raise it. You answered it. Thank you. So a motion has been made. Do we have a second?
I second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries.
Madam Chair, I think on the rejected category, we have to individually move on those. as I
Do we
recall.
individually?
That's what the board typically does, correct?
So with that, then, just to make sure the record's clear, I move that we do reject this one ballot because the individual is not properly registered.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you for checking that, catching that. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is a special election ballot remakes. Sherry, I'll turn that over to you.
So there are no ballots to be remade from the
Nice.
August special election.
That's
Yes.
amazing. Let's not get used to that.
Correct.
It's like the calm before the storm, possibly.
Absolutely.
And next on our agenda, we have a special hearing, protest of petitions to challenge ordinance number 2019-10 in the village of Gulf Manor. Sherry, do we have an individual in here or individuals who can step to the podium and identify what this is all about for me?
Yes, I believe there are several individuals here regarding the Village of Gulf Manor protest, and the packet is separate on your table with all the documents pertaining to the protest.
Can you step to the podium, please, and identify yourself?
Yes, thank you, and good morning. My name is Derek Klinger. I'm an attorney with the law firm McTighe & Colombo. I'm here today on behalf of the protester, Elaine Moskovitz, who's also with us right here in the crowd.
Okay.
No, I do want to note at the beginning that Ms. Moskovitz, the protester, has agreed to dismiss several of the grounds listed in the protest. Now, my presentation today will proceed in the order presented in the protest. So as we go along, I will note to you which of the grounds the protester is no longer pursuing. Now, just stepping back, kind of a general matter, this protest concerns a referendum petition that was submitted in the village of Gulf Manor. Now, one of the first questions you always ask when reviewing a petition is how many valid signatures are needed, and that is the question presented by the first ground listed in the protest on page 3. Now, the charter provides that a referendum petition must have a number of signatures equal to, quote, not less than 10% of the number of those who voted in the preceding gubernatorial election. Now, I think there are two ways to interpret this. One, it could be the number of voters from the village who cast ballots for the office of governor in the last election, in which case the petition would need 152 valid signatures. However, it is the protester's position that the phrase gubernatorial election refers not to the total votes cast in the office of governor in the last election, but instead to the total votes cast in the last election at which the governor was elected. Now, for comparison, the Ohio Revised Code, when discussing discussing municipal initiatives, specifically uses the phrase that it requires a number of signatures equal to 10% of the electors who, quote, voted for the governor at the most recent general election for the office of governor. So it is our position that if the village charter had intended for the number to be based upon the number of votes cast for the office of governor, it would have used much more specific language to do so. But it didn't. And, but under this interpretation, which it's based upon the total votes cast in the 2018 election, the petition would need 154 signatures. But it currently has 155. Now, before I move on onto the remaining grounds of the protest, the Gulf Manor Village Administrator, Ron Hirth, is here with the original copy of the referendum petition. I would like to submit the original into the record. I think it's because it's a public record, it's self-authenticating. But Mr. Hirth is here, so if the board would prefer to have him authenticated, we can. Do you have a preference?
I would prefer that, please.
Okay. And Mr. Hirth, can I call you to just to authenticate this, answer a couple questions under oath? Sorry. Just to authenticate this, can you answer a couple questions under oath?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's
Can you
have him
raise-
sworn in by our court reporter.
I do.
Madam Chairman, I'm Kurt Hartman, representing the Petitioners Committee. We're going to be presenting evidence, I think, the process should allow us at least see the evidence that's being presented.
I have no objection to that.
I agree with that. That makes no,
If I may also, there is one procedural matter that I'd like.
could you step to the podium, please, and tell us who you are and who you're representing?
I'm Kurt Hartman. I'm an attorney here in town and represent the Petition Committee. I think one thing this board has to ascertain at the outset is even if it has jurisdiction to entertain this protest at this time. Because what is before this board right now is resolution number 2020-10 that was passed by the Gulf Manor City Council on July 14th. That is what is presented to the committee, calling upon the placement in section 1 of that ordinance or resolution. I believe the board has a copy. It simply says, council does hereby refer ordinance 2019-10 to the Board of Elections to place a question on the ballot. The issue in terms of validity of signatures, et cetera, is long past. That was presented back in April approximate timeframe when this board already reviewed the number of signatures, ascertained the valid number of signatures, and reported it back to Gulf Manor. Upon which then the Gulf Manor City Council, and it's in their whereas clause, made a determination that the petition was valid and sufficient. So if any protest hearing should have occurred, it should have occurred in terms of the signatures and validity of signatures and required number of signatures. The time for that was back in April. That horse is out of the barn. It's over and done with. The fact that I know a protest was filed back then, but the fact that they did not pursue it at that time, they've waived that issue at this stage. All this board has before it right now is the resolution. And but this board has no authority to invalidate the properly passed resolution by the city of Gulf Manor, or by the city council of Gulf Manor. And so I think it is improper. I think the board is without jurisdiction to entertain protest over petitions, because that's not what's before this board. What's before this board today is this resolution that was passed last month. So that's the procedural issue I think the board has to address at the outset. And if you proceed forward with an evidentiary hearing over our objections, we can, but I wanted to make sure that issue is preserved there as well. So, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Well, thank you again. I guess just responding to Mr. Hartman's comments, the protester filed a protest back in the spring, and we were not permitted to pursue it. It was delayed until today, is my understanding. So this is the only opportunity we are given. Secondly, this is just the proceeding of how township referendum protests work. The fact that they passed a resolution doesn't change that.
Okay, I would just say, if there was a protest back in March, then though, this board did not conduct a hearing, the remedy that the protesters should have done at that time was a mandamus action to compel the board to conduct the hearing it should have conducted back then. They didn't do so. They waived that issue then. They didn't pursue it aggressively. We're not here basically certifying petitions. We're here simply on a resolution passed by the city council. Calling for the placement of the ordinance on ballot. That's it. That's all the board has to do is consider the resolution. The validity and sufficiency has already been determined by city council, which they're allowed to, is their obligation under the city charter. The fact that they did not pursue a mandamus action back in March doesn't give them the right now, late in the day, to try to attack a resolution passed by city council. We're not here on the petitions, we're here on the resolution today, placed on the ballot.
I just have a question. Is there any reason why this wasn't brought to, or discussed or brought to our attention before now?
I believe that it was. The protester filed numerous letters with the board and the village asking this to proceed. I'd also note further, the Board of Elections had told the village a protest couldn't happen until now. And further, I mean, we're talking about March. That was when the stay-at-home order went into effect. The pandemic was launching. I think everything was shut down for a couple of months as well.
Nothing was, the Ohio Supreme Court was not shut down. You can electronically file, and with all due respect, if I was in the positions were reversed, and I represented a protester back then, and this board did not proceed forward with the hearing at the time, trust me, you would have been in a mandamus action. Because that's the right, because I think you had the legal obligation back in March or April to do
it just seems like
6 months, 5 months later.
The petitioners are trying to punish the protesters for just following what the board's instructions were, and I just think that's unfair.
Madam Chair, I might suggest that we allow the hearing and presentation just to move forward, and that I know I'll be reserving comment. Since mandamus is discussed and always a possibility, I will then ask that we retire to executive session to consult with counsel about appropriate next steps, given that the board could potentially be sued. So with that, that would just be my thought, would be to allow the presentation so we can all digest the information that both sides wish to present to the board, and then ultimately move for an executive session to consult with our counsel, so we don't do so in a public forum
I
that could
think
jeopardize the board's legal position.
Absolutely, I agree with you. So let's move forward.
Thank you. Now, we were discussing the village administrator, Ron Hirth, who had brought an original copy of the petition with him that we wanted to introduce into the record. I believe Mr. Hirth had been, I think he had been sworn in. I think that's as far as we made it. I guess you can come back up. And I guess I just want to confirm with the reporter that he was sworn in before. Okay, thank you. Can you state your name for the record?
It's Ron Hirth.
And do you work for the Village of Gulf Manor?
I do.
And what's your position with the village?
Village administrator,
And how long have you served as the administrator?
2.5 years.
Okay. And are village initiative and referendum petitions filed with your office? Yep. Are initiative and referendum petitions for the village filed with your office?
Yes.
And are you aware of the referendum petition that was filed with the village earlier this year concerning Village Ordinance 2019-10?
Yes.
Was that filed with your office?
Yes.
Do you have a copy of, do you have the original copy of the referendum petition with you today?
Yes.
Is that what?
Would be that
This?
document,
Okay.
yes.
At this time, I'd like to introduce it into the record and present it to the board for its review, unless Mr. Hartman wants to see it. May I
Thank you.
approach the?
Mhm.
Mark it as protesters exhibit 1. Thank you, Mr. Hirth. No further questions for you.
Thank you.
Also at this time,
You know, Madam Chair, I don't want to step
No,
in
go
here.
ahead.
Does our council have any suggestion here? I mean, I know what I'm inclined. Yeah, I mean, if we're going to conduct it that way, we probably should give everybody a chance to ask questions of all the witnesses, so I have no objection to
I'm
that.
comfortable
if
with
the
that.
chair doesn't, yeah.
I'm comfortable with that.
I understood you correctly. You said that the initiative and referendum petitions are filed with your office.
They were returned to our office, and then they were forwarded to the Board of Elections.
Are you familiar with the village charter for the Village of Gulf Manor?
Yes.
Are you aware that section 11.02 of the charter declares that petitions are filed with the village fiscal officer or the clerk of council?
They were. Mr.
That is your office?
That is not my office. The fiscal officer reports directly to me. He took possession of the petitions.
So it'd be more accurate to state that the petitions were filed with the fiscal officer, not your office.
Correct.
Is that correct? So when you told the board that they were filed with your office, that was false, correct?
I misunderstood the question.
Thank you.
thank you.
Do you have anything else, counsel, for your witness?
No, thank you. Also at this time, I have a packet of additional exhibits I'll give to you now, and then I'll address them as we go forward.
Sure.
And I've got a copy for you too, Mr. Hartman.
You know what? I'm sorry.
And this is Exhibit 2, is that correct?
It's a series of exhibits that I'll be addressing each one individually. And each of these exhibits are separated with tabs, and so that's this mint green color. Now, the document on top is a copy of the Board of Elections detail report for the petition. It lists which signatures were accepted and which were rejected. I realize the board may already have this in their packet, I'm not sure, but just to be safe, I have included this as exhibit, and I would like to introduce this into the record as protesters exhibit number 2. Moving on to the next few grounds in the protest, grounds Roman numeral 2B1 and Roman numeral 2B2, which are on pages 4 to 8 of the protest. These concern part petitions circulated by out-of-state circulators. Part petitions 6, 7, 8, 10, and 11 were all circulated by individuals who provided out-of-state residences, and curiously, they all contain only one signature. Now, having reviewed the original copies of these part petitions, it is clear that what was filed on part petition number 6 is not an original signature, but instead is a photocopy of a signature. Now, you all have the original petition in front of you, or not in front of you, but with your board, and I think it would be helpful to look at it. What you'll see is that the petition is a photocopy. The signature has been written over it with ink, and that is the same with the circulator statement.
Okay.
Because because this is not an original ink signature, the protester respectfully requests that this petition be invalidated.
I'm sorry, what was that last statement that you made?
Yes, so because this is the part petition number 6, because it does not contain an original signature, it's a photocopy, or it appears to be a photocopy, we're requesting that this be invalidated by the board. So moving on to ground Roman numeral 2, B3, which is on pages 9 and 10 of the protest. This concerns a part petition circulated by an individual named Tahila Hay. Now, there's no voter registered under this name at this address. Nevertheless, Ms. Moskowitz, the protester, would like to dismiss this claim. I will, however, return to this individual in a few moments because she also signed the petition. Next, the next section of the protest, ground Roman numeral 2C and ground Roman numeral 2D. This begins on page 10 of the protest. These concern the validity of 22 individual signatures. Now, we will be dismissing 10 of these challenges and contesting the remaining 12. And I will also address these in the order that they appear in the protest, just so it's easier to follow along. Now, as to the first 2 signatures identified in the protest, those listed in grounds Roman numeral 2C1, lowercase a and lowercase b, we dismiss these challenges. We do, however, challenge the 3rd signature. This is the one listed on ground Roman numeral 2C to lowercase a.
Counsel, I apologize. Maybe you guys are keeping up. I'm having a difficult time with it. So
I am too.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
trying to follow up and
So I apologize. Maybe you can tell us, maybe you can take us to the page number of the actual protest.
Yeah, page 11.
but the
Page
pages,
11, I
but
think.
the pages aren't numbered, are they?
Yeah, they're numbered in the bottom.
Please.
All right. Page number at the bottom here of the original protest.
Oh, of the protest.
The original protest that was in our packet.
Oh, okay,
That's what.
okay. Okay,
Yeah, so page 11, I'm discussing protest ground Roman numeral 2C 2 lowercase a. Now, I do want to note that the protest uses a different way of identifying the signature than the board's detail report. That the petition consists of 17 part petitions, which total 51 pages. Now, the board's detail report refers to the part petition number, while the protest refers to which of the 51 pages the signature appears on. And I will point you to both, just for the sake of clarity. Now, this protest challenges the signature appearing on part petition number 9, line 4, as not genuine. In other words, it's our position that this signature should have been rejected in the first instance. Now, the board's detail report says that this is the signature of a voter named Jude Wurzberger. Now, if you look at the next exhibit in the packet of exhibits, which I will mark as protesters exhibit number 3, there is a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the petition, as well as the signature of the voter Jude Wurzberger that the Board of Elections has on file. And behind that page is the original document that the board provided with the voter's signature. And so again, this protest is challenging the signature as not genuine. It is our position that it does not sufficiently, signatures on the petition does not sufficiently resemble the signature of the voter on file. As you could see in the first name of the signature on file, there's kind of more loops, a couple different curves, far more bends in the first name. And the last name itself also looks significantly longer than the last name of the signature that's on file with the board.
Let me stop you real fast. Could I, counsel, and just ask our director, during our initial process, these were not flagged as signature mismatches per our normal process. Is that fair?
No, our staff accepted these signatures
Yeah.
as genuine signatures and comparing them.
Yeah, counsel, you can imagine the signature mismatch issue. We deal with it often on this board, and it's rather subjective, as I'm sure you can tell. So.
Yes, and I understand that, and I appreciate the responsibility that the board has in making this determination. But it is our position that these should have been rejected in the first instance.
You keep going. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No problem.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Counselor, did you or anybody else attempt to reach out to any of the people whose signatures you're challenging in this process?
No, we did not. But again, it is our position that these should have been rejected in the first instance based purely on the board's voter records, which is the first step in reviewing the signatures.
Right, I understand that, but you have no affidavits from Mr. Wurzberg or anybody else claiming that they either did or did not?
No, we did not speak
Okay,
with the voter.
Thank you.
Now, moving on in the protest to the next 3 signatures, grounds Roman numeral 2, C2, lowercase b, c, and d. This is on page 12 of the protest. We dismiss the challenges to these 3 signatures. As to the next signature, ground Roman numeral 2, C2, lowercase e, we're challenging this one as well as not genuine. Now, this signature appears on line 7 of the 47th page, which is line 7 of part petition number 16. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of Shoshana Brickman. And the next exhibit in the packet, which I will mark as Protesters Exhibit 4, this one also provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the part petition and the signature on file with the board for the voter Shoshana Brickman. Now you can.
Just procedurally speaking, Mr. Hartman, have you had a chance to see these things yet or not yet? Yeah.
I mean, I got his exhibit.
Got it now, okay.
Going through it with you.
Just to be clear, okay.
Thank
And counsel, again, not to jump ahead, is there a certain number of people that you're just going to ask us to reject for signature mismatch?
Yes, 11 total.
11 total, okay. And I mean, again, not that, maybe trying to short circuit a little bit. I mean, is that something where you just want us to just evaluate those ourselves again, and is that
Yeah.
essentially what you're going to tell
If
us?
that saves time, if you feel comfortable just looking at the side-by-side comparison, I certainly have my commentary, but I can save you all from that if you.
You know, it's up to you. I don't want to, I want you to obviously be able to represent your clients to the
Yeah.
fullest extent that you desire, but I'm just trying to understand it, so.
Yeah.
Okay, you can keep going.
Thank you. So comparing the signature of the voter Shoshana Brickman to the signature that appears on the petition, it's our position these look very little like each other. As you can see, the voter signature that appears on the voter records, the last name is, you can at least see the B and the R. It's pretty well spelled out, whereas the signature that appears on the petition is fairly illegible. So because these do not sufficiently resemble each other, it is our position that this should be invalidated as not genuine.
Madam Chair, may I just point something out regarding that? The signature that was accepted for counting did not belong to Shoshana Brinkman. It belonged to the very last individual listed in Section E, which is Ephraim Shamel, I believe. That is the signature, that signature was attributed to that particular voter, not Shoshana Brinkman.
Thank you, Ms. Poland, for the clarification.
I'm sorry, Director Poland. So I'm looking at the board's detail report. Do I just have the wrong page? Because the board's detail report says that line 7 of part petition is Shoshana Brickman.
I'm going to refer to our registration administrator who created the report for us. Mr. Eckert's going to pull the record for that, so
Okay.
if we could get back to that one.
Okay,
Yes,
continue to move on, please.
thank you. Now, as to the next signature in the protest, this is ground Roman numeral 2, C2 lowercase f, bottom of page 12, and it crosses over to page 13. Now, the signature that appears on line 23 of page 47, which is line 23 of part petition number 16, the board's detail report states that this is the signature of Ronald Hummins, and the next exhibit in the packet, which I will mark as Protesters Exhibit 5, provides a side-by-side comparison, again, of the signature on file for Mr. Hummins and the signature that appears on the petition. I would say they're both illegible, but in very different ways. The signature on the petition you see a lot more letters are trying to be spelled out there in cursive, whereas the signature on file with the board is, in large part, just a straight line with a squiggle in the middle. So again, because the signatures do not sufficiently resemble each other, we request that this be invalidated as not genuine. Now, the next ground in the protest, Roman numeral 2, C2 lowercase g. That's on page 13 of the protest. And the challenge is 2 signatures, but we are dismissing the challenges to both. As to the next signature, ground Roman numeral 2, C2H. Again, we're challenging this one as not genuine. Now, this signature appears on line 8 of page 50, which is line 8 of part petition number 17. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of Gershon Chaim Strulowitz. The next exhibit in the packet, which I'll mark as Protesters Exhibit 6, provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the petition with a signature on file for Gershon Chaim Strulowitz. Now, as you can see, the signature on file with the Board of Elections, the first name's spelled out, the second name is a little bit shorter, and then compared to the signature that appears on the petition. The signature that appears on the petition, it looks like the first letter is just the first letter of a name. It looks like an L, maybe. And it's got several kind of taller letters than the name that appears in the signature on the voters' records. Now we dismiss the next challenge, which is ground Roman numeral 2, C2 lowercase I. That's still on page 13 of the protest. As to the next signature, though, ground Roman numeral 2, C2J, still on page 13. We challenge this as not genuine. Now this signature appears on line 1 of page 17, which is line 1 of part petition number 6. Now, I referenced this signature earlier. This is the signature that, if you look at the original version of the petition, appears to have originally been photocopied, and then somebody wrote over it. But I would also challenge this as not genuine. Now, as you can see, the voter's signature that's on file with the board is spelled out. Now, comparing that to the signature that appears on the petition, it just looks very different.
Can I, so you're, again, do we have the originals here or no?
We do have the originals. In your packet, we have
Okay.
provided the board with a copy of the signatures that are on file, but it doesn't quite match up the original protest, and so many are being dismissed.
Right.
We were unaware of that. So, but you do have the signatures that are on file with the board in your packet. It just doesn't quite follow along with the protests, and so many intermittently are being dismissed.
What I'm having trouble understanding is that you're suggesting it's photocopied on the petition and then written over. That part just needs clarification.
Yeah, and so that was one of the initial grounds I discussed. So what I placed on the board's desk earlier is the original petition.
Right.
And so if you go to part petition number 6, and I invite Mr. Hartman up to look at this as well. If you look at part petition number 6, the signature page, it looks to have been photocopied, and then somebody wrote over it. Now, this is an out-of-state circulator. I'd be speculating, but I suspect the signature occurred in California, where the circulator is from, and then was photocopied and then probably emailed to the petitioners. But if you look at it, it looks like somebody just wrote over a photocopy of the signature. And it's the same for the circulator's statement on there as well.
That's on the original?
That's on the original. Obviously, if I made a copy of it, then it'd be a copy of a copy. So you can really only make that decision from looking at the original petition.
I'm not sure I
Well, the protest does contain allegations concerning the out-of-state circulators.
The objection to the out-of-state circulator is simply that registered voters and there's an objection in the protest relative to
I see. I misunderstood his question. This is being raised for the first time, having had the benefit. Well, the board does have the sua sponte authority to look at this. Obviously, I got to look at the originals this morning for the first time.
But you're objecting because you did not have an opportunity following due process to review it yourself before today.
didn't even know it was an issue until today. And bring something up like that without providing notice to the committee is due process.
Understandably so.
And I'd invite him to look at it as well. if it's originally photocopied signature, I just don't think the board should be accepting that. And that is the protest position.
But originally, this was not your protest position until today.
Right, because we did not get the opportunity to look at the original until recently. But it is not in the, this particular specific issue is not addressed in the protest letter. That is correct.
And you said it was part petition page, what, number 6?
Part petition number 6, yes.
And we marked those as pages with our stamp, Sherry, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm looking at page 6, part petition. There's just one signature.
Mm-hmm.
And you said the circulator statement appeared to be photocopied, then written over. I'm just not seeing that. I'm not challenging that I just want to make sure I'm looking at the right thing, because what you're suggesting is interesting enough to me that I want to look at it.
Is that the
Is-
original?
These are the originals, aren't they, Sherry?
The originals, the board does not have the originals on file.
Ah.
They were returned to the village.
It looks an awful lot like the original.
So what was submitted just this morning as part of the protest was the original, correct?
Yes.
This is the original?
Yes.
I mean, you're welcome, I'll put my mask on. You're welcome to come up here and tell me if I'm looking at the right thing. I just don't see what the issue is there.
Yes, and so the issue is, I'm saying.
Mr. Hartman, you're welcome to come up too.
That it
I
was
just-
photocopied, and then somebody wrote over a photocopy, and that's what has been filed
How
with the
can you
board.
make that assumption?
I guess from looking at it and reviewing it.
But I mean, is that what you're referring to there? I don't see that where that occurred.
Yeah.
You're telling me that's a photocopy with having been written over?
But that's an
Yeah, please.
assumption.
I would object to the extent he's offering an opinion.
Go ahead. I'm willing to hear you out. I'm trying
Yeah,
to.
it's the number, you can see, it looks like there's photocopied ink under it, and then they're written on top of it.
Maybe there's white out there or something? See that? I'm sorry, Chef. I mean, that would be
And the voter's
yeah, pretty
signature as well.
subjective, but I hear what you're saying. I don't know that I agree or disagree necessarily.
Unless you're a person who's an expert in signature identification, I would have some question about that.
It definitely looks, a little strange, but yeah. Anyway, okay.
And if the board disagrees with that argument, we are also challenging it as not genuine for not matching the voter's signature on file.
Anyway, I didn't mean to belabor that point, but it just, anyway, you can go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. The next signature in the protest is ground room number 2C2K. We're challenging this as not genuine. Now, this signature appears on line 5 of page 26, which is line 5 of part petition number 9. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of.
Which was 2CK, what was it?
Yep,
2K?
2C2K,
Okay, gotcha.
which is on page 14 of the
Okay.
protest. Now, the board's detail report states that this is the signature of Zvi Fishman. I apologize to the voter if I mispronounced their name. The next exhibit in the packet, which I'll mark as Protesters Exhibit 8, provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the petition and the signature on file with the board for the voter, Zvi Fishman. Now, again, the first.
Can you clarify just for me, I'm lost a little bit where we're at in terms of which.
Yep, we're on page 14 of the protest, lowercase k.
Protest 2C.
Okay.
It's page 14 of his
Page
protest.
14.
And it's lowercase k.
Okay, I've got it now. Thank you.
And again, we're requesting the board to look at these signatures. The first letters in each name of the signatures look differently. They loop differently. They go in different directions, excuse me. And then on the petition, the name is far more spelled out. compared to the signature on file with the boards. So again, because these do not sufficiently resemble each other, we're asking that the board invalidate it as not genuine.
Okay.
Moving on to the next signature, ground Roman numeral 2, C2, lowercase l, still on page 14 of the protest. Now this signature appears on line 8 of page 26, which is line 8 of part petition number 9. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of Jonathan Goldstein. And again, the next exhibit in the packet, which I'll mark as protesters exhibit 9, provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the part petition and the signature on file with the board for Jonathan Goldstein. Now, as you can see, the signature on the petition appears to have just been, it's one letter with kind of a circle around it and a line, whereas the signature on file with the board for this voter is the name Jonathan Goldstein, completely written out, completely spelled out. So again, because these do not sufficiently resemble each other, it appears to be non-genuine, and we're asking the board to invalidate it for that reason. We dismiss the next challenge, which is ground Roman numeral 2, C2M on the bottom of page 14. We are challenging the next signature, ground Roman numeral 2, C2, lowercase n. Again, challenging this as not genuine. Now, this signature appears on line 18 of page 26, which is line 18 of part petition number 9. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of Dahila Spetner. Now, the next exhibit in the packet, which I'll mark as protesters exhibit 10, provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the part petition and the signature on file with the board for Dahila Spetner. Now, it is our position that this is not the signature of Dahila Spetner, but instead is the signature of Dahila Hay, or Dahila Hay. Now, Dahila Hay was a circulator of the petition, and this exhibit contains a copy of the information she provided on the part petition she circulated, which is part petition number 14. And I will note further that in the circulator statement, she indicated that she resides at the address that was provided on the petition for the voter's signature.
So you're comparing and contrasting between Tatila High and Tahila Spitner, looks like.
That's correct, and it is our position that the signature on the petition is not the signature of Dahila Spetner, but is the signature of Dahila High. And the signature that's provided from the circular statement is just further indication of that. Now moving on to the next signature. This is protest ground Roman numeral 2, C2O. This is on page 15 of the protest. Now this signature appears on line 34 of page 27, which is line 34 of part petition number 9. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of Yitzchak Nasan-Torin. And the next exhibit in the packet, which I'll mark as protesters exhibit number 11, again provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the part petition and the signature on file with the board for the voter that the board said signed the petition. Again, just from looking at the side-by-side comparison, the name appearing on the petition is far longer than the name appearing on the voters' records, and so based on that, we think the board should have invalidated this in the first instance as not genuine. And moving on to the next signature, ground Roman numeral 2, C2P. We're challenging this as not genuine as well. The signature appears on line 1 of page 29, which is line 1 of part petition number 10. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of Marilyn Horwitz. And the next exhibit in the packet, which I'll mark as protesters exhibit 12, provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the part petition and the signature on file with the board for Marilyn Horowitz.
I mean, counsel, just on that one, I mean, we could, these are just such subjective calls. I mean, that first name looks awfully similar to me.
I agree. I'm looking at the
You know, and
same
it's
thing.
just so darn subjective. And I understand our obligation here, but boy, it just,
Especially on the first name.
I'm going to call Marilyn Horowitz here, confirm that is her name and how this is so arbitrary.
Thank you.
She'll be, when my opportunity comes, I'll call her and she'll verify this.
Thank you.
just so, since you've got the floor, Mr. Hartman, will you also be calling others or just her? I'm just curious.
I am going to call Rabbi Matzen, who witnessed several of these signatures.
And is he here?
He is here.
Okay. Thank you.
Counsel, go ahead.
Thank you, and I'll move on to the next signature, especially if the voter is here to testify that she's.
Counsel, I apologize too. I didn't write your name down originally, and I should have. I'm sorry. You're
Derek Klinger?
Klinger?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
So the next signature is protest ground Roman numeral 2, C2Q. Again, we're challenging this as not genuine. Now, this signature appears on line 3 of page 35, which is line 3 of part petition number 12. The board's detail report states that this is the signature of Vanessa Lee Cure Washington. And again, the next exhibit in the packet, which I'll mark as Protesters Exhibit 13, provides a side-by-side comparison of the signature on the petition and the signature on file with the board for Vanessa Lee Cure Washington.
But again, she's got a big loop going below the line in 2 places, you know, anyway.
Actually, almost 3 places. She loops it.
Yeah, I guess our position is the signature on file with the board, the name's pretty clearly spelled out, whereas the petition signature does not look like that.
Okay.
Now, as to the next signature in this section, ground Roman numeral 2, C2R, we'll dismiss the challenge to that one. That's on page 16.
Okay.
And as the final challenge signature, this is protest ground Roman numeral 2D on page 16. We protest is challenging the signature on the basis that the signer is deceased. This is the signature of Mary K. Duff, which appears on line 15 of page 14, or line 15 of part petition number 5. Now, the voter signed the petition in February and unfortunately passed away after that in May. And the last exhibit in the packet, which I'd like to mark as Exhibit 14, is a copy of her obituary. Now, this raises the legal question of how to treat the signature of someone who has passed away after signing. Now, the revised code is silent, and we could not find any guidance in the Secretary of State's elections official manual on how to treat a deceased voter. We don't know if the board has its own precedent in handling this. But if the board does not have any precedent, then it appears to be an open legal question. We'd ask you to invalidate it as they have passed away.
I mean, do you have a rule that you would suggest we establish for how long a person has to live until their signature is valid?
Well, our position is she passed away before the election, and so the signature is valid.
Well, that would
But
put
the
at risk
signature-
hundreds
right.
of candidates probably if they.
Right.
Excuse me. We count their votes if they die before the election and they voted early.
Right.
Well, I thought we did, yeah.
Fair enough. Go ahead.
So that's the end of the portion of going through each signature. And to conclude, although this protest raises the legal question of how many signatures are required, which is how do you interpret that village charter provision, the protest does primarily concern the validity of 12 signatures, 11 of which we've contend are not genuine, and then, of course, the deceased voter at the end. Now, it is the protesters' position that all 12 are invalid, and therefore, regardless of whether the petition needs 152 signatures or 154, the petition does not contain a sufficient number because invalidating these certainly brings it under that number. Thank you for your time. I'd now like to move the
Mr.
exhibits into the
Klinger?
record.
Go ahead. I'm sure we'll accept his exhibits, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, just in summary, so the total of the argument really is that the signature mismatches coupled with the one deceased voter, that would invalidate. That's sort of a summary of it, right? Just so
Yes.
I'm clear about what your argument is. Okay, very good. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Mr. Hartman a chance.
Mr. Hartman, can you step
Madam
to the
Chair.
podium, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes, yes.
Might I ask just that we take a break briefly?
I could use a break as well.
Okay.
All right. If
So,
you,
Before we proceed with that.
why
Make a
don't,
motion, we just stand in recess for 5 minutes? Is that
5
sufficient?
minutes, and then when you return, we'll have you sworn in.
Okay.
I don't know that we sworn
I'm
Mr.
not, yeah, you didn't swear on Ms. Klinger. and
I-
Oh, I
attorneys
thought we
generally
did.
don't.
This is
I thought
something
we
that we,
did.
we didn't swear in Mr. Klinger. I've never felt we need to swear in attorneys, but Madam Chair, not something we're gonna.
Well, if we didn't do it with him, I guess we don't, I thought we did.
Well,
Sorry.
we'll do it with witnesses.
Witnesses, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only person I think that was sworn was the, Mr. Hirth.
Right, the
That's
administrator.
true, that's true. Okay, 5
So I've made a
minutes.
motion that we stand in adjournment for take a recess.
Recess for 5 minutes, which brings us back to 9:38, let's say 9:35, return at 9:35.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Do I have any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. clarification, identify again the correct number of the ones that you want to have rejected.
Yes, and thank you again.
Yeah, I'll move that
Yes.
we come out of recess.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstaining? That motion carries. We are out of recess, and I have just requested that Attorney Klingman give us a summary of the signatures that he is requesting be rejected.
And do you want me to tell you which one I'm dismissing as well?
Yes.
Okay, so starting on page 10 of the protest,
Yes.
C1A, we're dismissing A.
Okay, so you're dismissing A, got it, that's on 16. You can just, now you can just go with letters, I think, is that all right?
Right, let's
Or
do
Yep.
that, yes.
Dismissing B.
Dismissing B, okay, and the top of 11?
B, yes. Challenging 2A,
Okay, on page 11, 2A, you're going to stand on,
and that is protesters exhibit number 3.
okay?
Dismissing B.
B on the bottom of page 11?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
dismissed, okay?
Which one was that?
Letter B on the
B?
bottom of page 11. B is in boy.
Okay. All right.
Dismissing C.
Got it?
Dismissing D.
D is in dog, got it?
Challenging E.
Okay,
What exhibit is that?
Yes, and that's exhibit 4.
okay,
And though that is the one that Director Poland was seeking clarification on, which I didn't get the update, so I don't know if that's the right signature or not.
Okay.
Do you need us to address it now, or are you just getting your summary for now?
yeah, let's finish the summary.
Okay. So challenging E, challenging F on the bottom of page 12. That is exhibit 5.
Okay,
On the next page, dismissing G. Challenging H, which is exhibit 6. Dismissing I.
got it. What about J?
Challenging J, which is exhibit 7.
Okay,
On the next page, challenging K, which is exhibit 8. Challenging lowercase l, it's exhibit 9. Dismissing M,
M like Mary, got it?
yes. On the next page, challenging N. Challenging O.
What number is
Yes,
N?
I apologize for that. Let me make sure I say this correctly. N is exhibit 8.
Okay. No,
Oh, did I trip up?
it would, looks like it would be 10 to me as well.
This is the Tehila Spetner one.
Yep. Sorry, I was looking at the next signature down.
Could you repeat that again, please?
Yes, so N is exhibit, you said 10.
Yes.
Yes. Challenging O, that's exhibit 11. Challenging P, that's exhibit 12. Challenging Q, exhibit 13. Moving on to the next page, dismissing R. And then challenging DA, which is exhibit 14. That's the deceased voter.
Got it?
And that's the individual signatures. That,
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Yep,
Thank
thank you.
Sherry, do you want to go ahead and clarify the one? I think it was on page 11 of the protest. I got that right?
Yes. Let me pull that. What we have done is pulled, originally, we had not pulled the signature of that voter as part of your packet. So Mr. Eckert has pulled that, so when you go to compare signatures, we'll have that available.
Okay.
Okay. That's O. Is that the one you discussed, that you just discussed?
I don't believe so. Do you
No, it's
have
on-
that?
It's Exhibit 4 on page 12,
There we
it's
go.
sub-letter E.
Okay,
Yes, and I believe the
okay.
issue
gotcha.
was, I said it was Shoshana Brickman.
Yes, and we did not have that correct record for that voter for the board to review, so we've pulled that signature and so that the board can review that when you get to that point in this presentation.
Okay, I just want to clarify for my own purposes. So that signature that is on the petition is supposed to be Shoshana Brickman?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
So I had that
yes,
right.
that's
Okay.
correct.
Thank
Yes,
you.
yes.
Thank you.
So that's no longer one that needs to be challenged?
No, it is.
No, he is still challenging, I believe.
Yes, I'm still challenging, and if you recall, I had said this was, that the board's report said this was the signature of Shoshana Brickman. Director Poland said it was a different voter, and it sounds like they've clarified that it was Shoshana Brickman, so my exhibit has the right signature for comparison, and I would request that the board examine that in comparison to the signature on the part
Okay,
petition.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Klinger, thank you.
Mr. Hartman?
May it please the board. Before addressing and calling witnesses, I just want to address some of the few arguments that were made at the outset by council. In terms of the number of required signatures, in terms of the language, those who voted in the last gubernatorial election, starting into wordsmith, you read the language, I think the board has to appreciate that the default is always in favor of referendum and allowing the people to have a voice there. It's interesting, council said the language could be much more specific. Okay, yes, it could be. Therefore, the ambiguity must be construed in favor of allowing referendum and not a strict interpretation that's not in the city charter. Let me address the last thing, the deceased voter in terms of, is there a standard rule? I think there is actually, the board does generally do a standard rule on petitions. Usually in the reverse situation, when somebody signs a petition that is not registered to vote, but then simultaneously registers to vote, the standard, my understanding has always been, is the person registered to vote at the time that the Board of Elections reviews the signature? And I think that would be an appropriate rule in terms of somebody who dies subsequent to signing. And in this case, the voter was clearly alive at the time that the board did check the signatures. And I think in terms of consistency, that would probably be an appropriate rule. Notwithstanding the fact that Mr. Stevenson indicated that you do allow those who pass away between voting and absentee and election day do still count those votes. So with those things being said, I do want to address just a few of the signatures. I think Ms. Gerhardt pointed out probably the right question of what effort did they take to confirm with anybody other than council coming in here and trying to play handwriting expert, which none of us are. What did they do? They did nothing. I'm going to call a few people, one whose signature is being challenged. The second is a circulator who witnessed about 3 of these signatures on the petitions, and to simply show the arbitrariness with which these challenges are being made. So with that, I would call Marilyn Horowitz, please. Horowitz, you are a resident in Gulf Manor?
Correct.
And a registered voter?
Correct.
I'm going to show you what I believe has been marked previously as Protesters Exhibit 12, which is the comparison of the signatures relative to a signature attributed to Marilyn Horowitz. On the left side, there's an indication of the petition signature. You see what I'm pointing to?
Yes.
Is that your signature
it is.
there? Thank you. No further questions. Hang on. Senator, if you got any questions? No questions.
Mr. Hartman?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'll do.
I'd like to ask Ms. Horowitz a question, please. Ms. Horst, thank you for coming in today. Mr. Hartman referred to you the copy of a signature on a petition. And I assume you have it in front of you.
I do, yeah.
Okay. And you've said that that is your signature?
Right.
Just read for Exhibit 12, not the petition itself.
Yeah, Exhibit 12, correct. Did you sign that petition?
did.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
This time I would call Rabbi A.D. Matzen, please. Would you state your name, please?
Avraham David Matzen.
No problem. And you were involved in a part of the petition effort that for the board?
Yes, I was a circulator.
You circulated certain petitions, and so you witnessed certain signatures when they were being signed by individuals?
Yes.
I want to show you the first exhibit that's been marked as Exhibit 3, which is the comparison for individual identified as Jude Wurzberger. Do you know who Jude Wurzberger is?
Yes,
When you were circulating a petition, did you obtain his signature on a petition?
I did.
And I'm pointing to the signature on the left side of that page. Know whose signature that is?
I do.
Whose is that?
Jude Wurzberger.
And did you personally witness him
I'd
signing
object.
it?
It was lack of foundation. There's been no testimony that he even circulated this part petition.
But he just said he did,
He just said he did.
didn't he? Did I miss it? Yeah.
I circulated this petition, and this is my signature, yes.
Okay, thank you. No problem. And you witnessed his signature of that petition?
I did personally.
Thank you. Now, the next one I want to look at is, I believe, is Exhibit 9. We had trouble confirming what the exhibit number was. This is the one for Jonathan Goldstein. You know who Jonathan Goldstein is?
I do.
And did you circulate a petition that Jonathan Goldstein signed?
I did in his home.
Okay. And again, I'm pointing to the Exhibit 9, the signature on the left side, that indicates it's the petition signature. Did you recognize that signature?
I do.
And whose signature is that?
Jonathan
And
Goldstein.
did you witness him signing that petition?
I did.
Next exhibit I'm going to call up is Exhibit 11. This is signature purportedly of Yitzhak Torin. Do you know Yitzhak Torin?
I do.
And then did you circulate a petition to Yitzhak Torin?
I did.
Did you witness Yitzhak Torin signing the petition?
I did.
And on the Exhibit 11, left side, there's an indication. Recognize that signature.
I do.
Whose signature is that?
Yitzhak Torin.
Just a couple more questions. Do you know Tahila Spetner?
I do.
And do you know her also by a different name?
Yes, I was at her wedding. Her name is sometimes Tahila Hai, her married name.
And she goes by both names?
Yes.
Thank you very much. No further questions here.
See if council has questions at all for the witness. Mr. Klinger, do you have any questions, sir?
No.
From the board.
Thank you.
At this stage, I have nothing further in terms of evidence.
Thank you. So in summary, we have, make sure I'm counting this right, 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 signatures that have been validated. Is that right? Am I counting that right?
I didn't hear your question.
We have, it appears, 4 or 5 signatures that have been validated
By testimony.
by testimony, yes. Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Do you want to just, again, the old judge in me, should we give the protester a chance to rebut because they're the protester? They typically get the last word. Do you have any
Oh.
objection, Mr. Hartman, to a rebuttal?
You've got additional evidence, but I'll not be.
I just know to rebut anything, since he's got the burden.
I didn't know if I was going to make legal argument, a little more legal argument, I thought, but.
Why don't you, since you started, why don't you make a little more of a legal argument?
I'll make a little bit more legal
Okay,
argument.
thank you.
Mr. Stevenson, do you have any guidance for us?
I would say that if we're at a stage of argument, he gets to go first.
Yeah, he probably actually does.
Because, okay,
Yeah,
Mr.
Madam
Kling,
He's got to carry the burden.
Right. he's the
Okay.
protester. I would ask first, again, as a board member, do you have any rebuttal in terms of evidence at this juncture before we move into argument?
No.
All right, very good. Then I'm happy to hear argument. and you can go, and then Mr. Hartman, you'll get a chance to rebut, okay, sir?
It sounds,
Well, thank you again. Now, regarding the interpretation of the charter provision, I think the interpretation set forth by the petitioner's counsel requires you to insert words into the charter that are not used. So I would request that you make your analysis based on the language actually used in the charter amendment and not inserting any additional language. Now, the evidence you heard one signer swear that she signed the petition, and that's it. You heard a circulator testify that he witnessed a couple signatures. I would state that the circulator's testimony doesn't really add much because he's already signed a sworn statement and the circulator's statement swearing that these are the people he saw. So I don't think it really adds anything. And this brings us back to what is the board's duty in reviewing this petition. Now, when the board gets the petition, it has to compare the signatures on the petition with the signatures of the voters' records. If they do not sufficiently resemble each other, then it's not genuine. And so that's what we're asking with the challenge signatures, that you review them, determine if you think they sufficiently resemble each other, and if not, to invalidate them. Now, as to one of the signers, Tahila High, the witness stated that she's married, and maybe this is her married name versus her maiden name. But the rule is that the voter's name has to match the signature name, the signer's name has to match the name on file with the board, and it does not. If her name is Tahila High, she should have signed, so she should have updated her voter registration, and her voter registration does not reflect that name. So I would present to you that this is not the genuine signature of the voter. That's the extent of my argument.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. Mr. Hartman?
May please the board. I would refresh the board's my initial objection in terms of what is properly before this board. I think at this stage you are simply putting into effect the resolution that had already been passed by the village council, with the village council already making the determination that the petition was valid and sufficient. In terms of the protest, though, the burden is on the protester to demonstrate, I think at least by preponderance of the evidence, probably clear and convincing evidence, because we're dealing with elections, dealing with the right of people to vote, and the protester is trying to keep that right from the people of the village. And so therefore I would submit that the burden should be at minimum clear and convincing evidence. And it was interesting in council's presentation of his evidence, he started talking about the signatures, and I caught him saying at one stage, I'd be speculating about whether this or that in terms of a signature. That's not evidence. That's speculation. That's argument of counsel, all of which is not evidence. Protesters had the right and the power of subpoena to bring anybody in before this hearing. And they chose not to exercise that power, to try to demonstrate, irregularities. The board's staff has already reviewed the signatures. They've made the determination months ago. And there has been no demonstration by clear and convincing evidence that the signatures are not who they purport to be. There's no clear and convincing evidence that the circulators who attested to witnessing the affixing of each signature, that the person who purports to be is the person it is. And they did so under penalty of election falsification, a 5th-degree felony. So the presumption is regularity. The presumption is in favor of the signatures as already reviewed by the board. Protesters have not made any indication of have not presented any evidence beyond by clear and convincing that it's contrary. And in fact, our evidence actually shows the arbitrariness with which this challenge has been made. So we'd ask you to overrule the protest and implement the resolution passed by the village council and place the ordinance on the ballot this November. Thank Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, anyone else? Yes.
Good morning. I'm Tom Donlin. Our office is the city attorneys for the Village of Gulf Manor. I just wanted to clarify for the board, neither of these gentlemen are representing Gulf Manor here today. They're representing their various clients. We just came to show that we performed our ministerial duties and answer any questions. Mr. Hirth just presented the petition for your record. I just want to make sure that was clear.
Thank you, Mr. Dowling, for being here.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, as I indicated earlier, I think given the possibility of litigation, it's actually been referenced by both parties in one sense, no issue with that, but I think it's appropriate for us to perhaps move into an executive session to get advice from our attorney. So with that, I'll make a motion that we move into executive session to discuss possible litigation.
I'll second that motion.
Have a second on the motion. Any more discussion?
I think it's a roll call.
Roll call? Yes.
Aye?
Aye.
Yes.
We are now going into executive session.
that motion.
Roll call, please. Yes, aye.
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 Thank you. We're out of executive session. Continuing with our meeting. We've been in a discussion regarding the hearing and the protest of petitions. We've made a decision.
I think we heard legal advice. I'm not sure we've made a decision, but I'll say that I'm prepared to make a motion myself. The motion here would be to deny the protest of the petitions, to deny the protest of petitions to challenge. So that's my motion.
I will second that motion.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion for denial is carried.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you
Yes.
very much. Next on our agenda is certification for the November 3rd, 2020 presidential election, questions and issues. Ms. Poland, can you address that, please?
Yes, you have in your packet a document entitled Hamilton County Ballot Issues List, November 3rd, 2020. There are 19 questions or issues and our charter amendments on this list. This is current as of end of day Friday. I will note the charter amendment filing deadline is September 4th. So if there's any additional charter amendments, they'll be presented to you at their next, your next meeting on September 8th. I will note, we also have on this list, I believe we have a question or issue from St. Bernard. Perhaps it's not on the list. I will note, we're not going to ask the board to certify the St. Bernard issue. It was filed with the Board of Elections. However, we've received word, this was the same question that the voters of St. Bernard just voted on at the August 4th special election. They had filed, just in case it didn't pass in August, they had filed for the November. So we have received word that they are meeting to vote to withdraw this question or issue next week. So,
Since it's already been acted on.
correct, by the voters. So we do recommend certification of the 19 questions and issues on this list. There is one additional school levy that was filed by Indian Hill Exempted Village School District that we asked the board to take up separately.
Okay, so right now we're just looking at the Hamilton County ballot issues list that begins with City of Chevy at tax levy renewal 0.75 mils. That's just the document I'm referring to. And those, again, that's, they've met the requirements to be on the ballot. The board staff is recommending them for certification. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So I'll move that we certify all of those questions and issues to the ballot in the fall campaign.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstaining? The motion carries. They're all accepted. Thank you.
Yes, and then I did want to bring to the board's attention that representatives from the Indian Hill Exempted Village School District did file a bond issue and tax levy. However, they filed after the deadline. This was filed with the board on August 7th, 2020, and the deadline was 4 p.m. on August 5th.
August 5th?
5th, correct.
And they're aware that they filed?
Yes, they were told at the time they presented the issue to the board.
Okay.
To the board staff. They were informed that it was after the filing deadline. They asked if there was anything that could be done. We did indicate that we would present this to the board at this meeting today, and if they had any additional information, they could provide it, but that has not been provided.
So do we need action on that, or do we just, since they didn't make it, they don't get certified, or do you want us to specifically reject it because it was late? Does it matter?
It's on the agenda, so I think you probably ought to specifically reject it because
I
it was
agree.
late.
All right, that's fine. I'll move that we reject the out-of-time certification of that levy.
For the Indian Hill exempt?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. Okay, next, write-in candidates. Ms. Poland?
Yes, you have in your packet a list of 3 writing candidates that have filed as of end of day Friday. I will note the filing deadline for writing candidates is August 24th, so if there's any additional writing candidates that file, you will certify those at your September 8th meeting.
And these 3 candidates that you're suggesting all have met the qualifications to be write-in candidates, is that right?
That's correct.
That includes petitions circulated and et cetera?
It's write-ins, there's not a petition that's required, they just complete a form,
Oh,
a write-in form, and those were properly completed and filed with our office.
Okay.
With that, then I'll move to certify the 3 write-in candidates.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries. Next is an update on the November the 3rd presidential election planning. Who's going to present that?
I think that's fine, I can both
Sally?
present, there's
And Sa-
obviously
Can we hear
lots
from
going
both
on.
Sally and Sherry, please? I have a couple questions, but I'll wait for your.
Sure, I can start. We have, just update on PEO recruitment. We have 77% of those positions filled, which is good. Just in a few weeks, we went from 48% filled to 78. However, we don't want to stop our recruiting efforts. And the vacancy in most of those positions are on the Republican side. That seems to be where we have the greater need right now. We do have 32, I believe, attorneys signed up through the, for that program to receive CLEs, working the polls, which is good, and working with Cincinnati Bar Association to help us promote that. Sally, do you have anything to add on the recruitment end of it?
They're still finalizing the details with the Mad Tree Brewing that are becoming a partner in democracy with us. And they are going to hold a couple nights where our staff can go there and actually run a video of being a poll worker and registering and absentee ballot requests.
Have you
The
heard
youth-
anything from the Urban League?
I don't think from the Urban League. I'll check on that.
Okay.
Stuff is coming in pretty fast and furious.
We do have the plan, we never really want to stop recruiting as long as people sign up and we have room for classes in order to train them. We plan to have standby precinct election officials, so if the positions are filled, we will get them trained and then have them on standby in case poll workers drop in that final week, drop out in the final week, or if they're not assigned, if they are all filled, then they'll report, the plan is they'll report here to the Board of Elections on Election Day and be able to go out for any no-shows that occur or just to help wherever whatever polling location may be experiencing lines. So our goal is to have standby election, precinct election officials ready to go out.
And the numbers coming in are coming in from the Secretary of State's office. They're coming in on our website. They're going directly to our poll worker department. I mean, today alone, this morning, there were 2 on our website, you know, saying I'm healthy, can I work the polls? So they're coming in pretty fast. And our staff is trying to keep up with entering them.
Right.
But we plan to send a message to everybody who signs up to say, we received your application, we'll be in touch with you really soon, and we
What-
want you.
When does the training actually start?
It starts October 1st.
Yes.
Okay.
Train the Trainer starts 3 days before that, and then our training classes start the 1st. And we have about 2,500 spots. And again, we were only going to train new people. Our people who were trained last November or March are going to be doing an online training.
Okay. So this will be October the 1st, the 20th, it officially kicks off?
And we haven't even started with the schools yet. Notices just went out to government teachers, and we have Zoom presentations. We have kind of a threefold way. They're either going to do a Zoom, and then the students will directly sign up online, or the teachers will make the presentation in their classroom and then collect the signups, and kind of a hybrid of that, too, for schools that are doing partial virtual and partial in school. So
Thank
we
you.
haven't even gotten to the youth at the booth yet.
That's where the Urban League was coming in, so I'll follow up with them to see where they are with that. Thank you.
And then for the online training, we're still tweaking that some. We use that for the August election for experienced poll workers. And it's going to be a lot of short little videos, sort of taking the idea that everyone goes to YouTube now to see how to, fix their washing machine or whatever, kind of that same concept, short little videos for our experienced poll workers during for their online training. And as far as absentee, we've processed a little over 18,000 applications, and we've already brought in our extras, our temporary staff to assist with that, because those numbers keep growing every day.
Process over how many?
18,000.
And how does that compare to,
This time in 2016 and in 2012, we had just a few hundred.
so
Yeah.
much
so
bigger?
Much, yes.
I had a question about that. Given that rate, by the time we get to October 6th, when ballots start getting mailed out, it seems to me in the past, and I could be wrong about this, that basically what we start doing on October 6th is working through that backlog of requests that we've had filed previous to that point. And it often takes more than one day to work through that backlog. Is that a fair understanding?
Well, we are processing them daily, so we're not waiting to process. What is maybe a little different, what we've done in past presidentials, is typically we contracted with our print vendor to print and assemble the packets up through the backlog of when absentee voting begins, which would be October 6th. And then we take over after that point. But that's not our plan for this election. We don't believe that we could keep up with the large volume on using the manual process that we have here. So we've contracted with our print vendor they will continue to print the ballots and assemble the packets all the way through the last Friday that a voter has to request a ballot. And we'll only take it in-house on that Saturday, because it'll have to be a same-day turnaround.
Well, I guess the question I was trying to get at least it's appeared to me in the past that not the entire backlog did not go to the post office on that very first day, that it would take a couple of days before we got through that whole process. So if we have a much, much bigger backlog this year, are we in a position to be sure that all of the ballots associated with that backlog go in the mail on October 6th, or is that going to take more than one day to do?
No, we believe we're usually caught up with it, so we believe we'll be able to stay up with that.
In the presidential, having the vendor do the ballots and drive them down here is, we can do it in one big lump.
Mm-hmm.
When we're trying to do a smaller election out of here, we are catching up.
Okay.
So is there a checklist or a way to make sure that what we're sending is going to be mailed out by the vendor?
Yes.
Yes, we have a manifest and a checklist, and we actually send bipartisan teams, to the print vendor for the first week to oversee and the process and make sure everything's being done correctly.
The manifest is such that we can actually, if somebody calls in and says, I changed the address I want it mailed to, we can check the manifest, pull it, and change it. So
Okay.
it's a pretty detailed process, but we do accommodate that.
And then normally we post on our website, I believe, the list of people to whom a ballot has been sent. A lot of campaigns use that for their chase pieces and so forth. So we're going to be doing that again. On October 6th, we will post a list of the voters who have been sent a ballot.
We are already posting that information. Yeah, we
All right.
began in late July, early August, because we were seeing such high volume come in. So we went ahead and, as soon as we start processing them, that information is updated each morning to the website.
You can pull a list of who's requested at this
Right.
point.
But not, and
Well-
then when it's sent out,
Then it'll be a different list.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at, is the list of ballots that have been sent out. That will be posted. Let's say we got 18,000 now, we could have 30,000 or 40,000. Theoretically, we're sending 40,000 ballots on October 6th, and we would then be posting to our website at the same time a list of those voters who have been sent a ballot. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the same list that's currently there. It'll just be updated with the date that the ballot was mailed, but it's the same list.
Okay.
Now, I have concerns. The past week, 2 weeks, maybe 3, and especially this weekend, no matter which newscast I put on, because I don't just stay with local, it's local and national, there's the ongoing concern about the post office and post office services. How and are they going to be able to handle the ballots, everything that we're sending out, as well as the voters returning? The other question I have and a concern is, my understanding is that the Postal Services has already deleted some of the equipment so that they can do rapid work on there, and they may not be recognizing our ballots, mail-in ballot forms as they have in the past. So how are we going to handle that? I mean, should we revisit the deadline when they should bring, all the ballots have to be in if they're mailed in? Because as I recall, we had a couple ballots or a few in the primary that the Postal Service did not in any way indicate when that came to them. You know, they were blank. As well as I'm concerned that we're going to have an increase of ballots coming in after our deadline. And so I'm just wondering, it appears as of even this morning, that's something that we still should be concerned about. My major concern is that the post office, postal services, and our Board of Elections have had a high level of voter confidence. That seems to be eroding, and it can metastasize like cancer to us, because there are things that are happening that's beyond our control. But what is in our control is how can we develop a system that assures our voters that their votes will be cast and will be counted, as long as they send that ballot in at a particular time.
Yes, there's numerous things that we are doing. One is the Secretary of State's office redesigned the absentee envelopes, and we'll be using that new design in addition to the election mail logo that the envelopes have always had. They're actually sort of color coordinated. So the window envelopes that are mailed to the voters with the blank ballot have a very large blue striping on it. So it makes it, again, more identifiable to the post office that this is election mail, this is a ballot. And this is something uniform throughout the state that's being done. And then on the return envelope also has been redesigned, and it has a very large red striping on the way back, the voted ballots. So that's one. The envelopes have been redesigned. We also are using the intelligent mail barcode that is recommended by the post office, so that way the ballot can be tracked through the process when it's in the hands of the post office. Of course, we've had for years the ability for voters to track their absentee through the process on our website, so they can track whether or not we've processed their application, whether their ballot has been mailed and on its way, and then when we receive the ballot, they can track that we've received it and accepted the ballot for counting. We're also going to be encouraging voters to sign up for something the post office has called, I think it's Informed Delivery is the name of it. So it's a free service, anyone can sign up for. Basically, you get an email or a text message of here's what's going to be in your mail today.
Yeah, pretty accurate.
So we thought we'd try to encourage that through social media and on our website to voters. That way, they could in the morning they'll get notice of your ballots and going to be in your mailbox today. And if it's not, then they can contact us and we can address it. Again, recommending that, we're doing our part to process the applications as quickly as possible. Also working with the post office to do the same thing. We have a meeting scheduled this week with, we're working to schedule it through our regional election mail coordinator with the post office, so that we have a good point of contact with our Norwood branch manager. We developed that during this past primary, and we want to do the same with a point of contact at the Dalton Street plant as well, because we pick up our mail from Norwood, and outgoing mail we deliver straight to Dalton, so it puts it in the mail stream quicker. And then we're encouraging voters to do their part and get those applications in as soon as possible. When they receive their ballot, vote it and mail it back or drop it off to us again as soon as possible.
So what my concern is, we can do all of that, but if they don't have the manpower in the postal services because people are being furloughed or, not given overtime, as well as the quick mail order sorter, from my understanding, in 95% of the states has been deleted. So we can do all that, but is there something else that we can do that could be more effective to ensure the voters that their ballot's going to count?
Well, we are meeting, the meeting that we have set up with the local post office. When we were running the extended primary, we worked with them to coordinate times, and there's, to my knowledge, they did work overtime and brought in whatever staff was necessary to process those in a timely fashion. So I gotta believe.
They're not going to be allowed to work overtime.
I don't know that.
That's what, as of this morning, all weekend I heard it, that's what my concern has been. If they block any postal service employees from working overtime, and if the machines that usually do the rapid sorting has been deleted from the states, that's a problem. So how can we assure our voters that their ballots will be counted?
Can I?
Yes.
Yeah. We were fortunate in April in Hamilton County, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that we did not have any ballots delivered to us by the post office beyond the 10-day cutoff. They have to be in within 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
In Butler County, they had 320 examples of that, roughly. And if I understand it right, in the Toledo area, they had maybe as many as a couple thousand. What happens if we get to 10 days after the election, or 14 days after the election, and we've got 5,000, 6,000 ballots showing up here beyond that 10 days? That 10-day window, I think, is established by state law. Is that correct? Or is that directive?
No, it's state law.
That's state law. So the only people who can deal with that would be either the legislature or possibly the courts if the situation gets bad enough. Is that correct?
I would say the only people that can deal with that 10-day window is the General Assembly. I can't see that the courts would have anything to add to that. They can try, but that's a hard deadline.
Another question. The current rule is that absentee ballots can be brought here. They can be brought to our drop box, or they can be mailed. I still am disappointed by the fact that we don't have the ability to add additional drop boxes. But what is true is that the voter can't take those ballots to their polling location and return them there. Is that right? And right?
I'm sorry, did you say
You
voters
can't take an absentee ballot to their local polling location and turn it in there.
No, voters cannot.
Is that also a matter of state law, or is that a matter of directive?
It's a matter of state law.
State law?
Yes.
Okay, so same issue.
So if that were, I don't know, I think that's an interesting concept. If it's a state law, that means it has to go again through to the General Assembly to modify that and make a change. And we've got, 78, 79 more days till Election Day?
Yes.
Be clear that voter can go into that polling location and cast a provisional ballot that will be counted so as long as they didn't ever send in their absentee vote, right?
That's correct.
If you walk into that polling location with your your early ballot filled out, you'll be offered a provisional ballot that's very likely to count, assuming everything else is okay.
Correct.
All right.
Wait a minute, State that again.
No, so if someone, under this idea that you take your early ballot to your
Uh-huh.
polling location, or to a polling location, you can just go to your own polling location that very same day and just cast a ballot. So you're not being denied the right to vote.
But it would be a provisional.
It'd be provisional, and then, again, assuming everything else is correct, then we're likely to count it, and, we're up to over 90% of our provisionals being counted these days, so you're very likely to have your vote counted that way on election day.
And these are questions that have been thrown at me when I'm out in meetings, like what ifs, the what ifs. And since I'm a what if person, I'm always going to do a what if, because that's my thing. So whatever we can do to make it easier for voters and does not in any way smell of any kind of voter suppression, then we must do that. But I did think that was a good idea that you brought up. But if there's a state law and a state mandate that says that when I go with my ballot that you've mailed to me and I've filled it out, I cannot go to my polling area and drop that ballot off because I live in Green Hills or Green Township, and I don't want to come all the way here to the only one mailbox that we have. But if I go to my polling location, I can do a provisional ballot.
Correct.
And you would be asked to do a provisional ballot on election day if you showed up even without your ballot, if you've requested an absentee ballot.
Okay.
So, because your name is, excuse me, your name is marked on the rolls that you've requested an absentee, and if you show up to vote on election day, you're given a provisional ballot. And assuming the absentee ballot did not come back before you requested the provisional ballot is going to count as long as everything is done correctly.
So I always do a what if. I'm gonna play the devil's advocate. What if I mailed my ballot back in, but forgot that I did it or wasn't sure, and I want to make sure my vote counts? I can go to my polling area, complete a provisional ballot, and if my ballot comes in that I've already filled out, even though I've filed the provisional, I will not be in any way charged in any way with being, doing something illegal.
That is something that has been the subject of discussion for many years, and your predecessor was very instrumental in making sure that that rule was enforced, that you can vote a provisional and an absentee, but only one of them is going to count.
Mm-hmm.
And we get probably several hundred every election cycle that's a general election.
Yeah, and generally, we put them into an anomaly stack, and then we usually give the voter the benefit of the doubt that they weren't trying to cast a second ballot, but we do look at them carefully to be sure, and Chip's always very vocal on this topic, and we look carefully at them, but I don't know that we've ever.
We've had a number of situations where people mail their absentee on Friday, and, and they come in and show up on election day anyway. That happens every cycle.
Okay.
Back to the drop box. In April, we've talked about this more than once, that we had very long lines, people trying to get to this drop box on that last day. And that was with a overall vote in the county of 150,000 voters. We're very likely to see something close to 500,000 voters in this election. So that situation out there in the parking lot could get to be a whole lot more complicated in November than it was in April. If I remember right, when I came in that night and that line was long, what we had done, at least it looked to me like what we had done, was station teams of one Democrat and one Republican out there with the plastic mail bins, and they were taking the ballots from the voters, just putting them straight into the bin. And that we had teams doing that in more than one spot around the parking lot. Is that memory?
I recall
correct?
that, yes.
We started out collecting them from the streets. The idea was that the voters wouldn't have to pull into the parking lot, but realized quickly that wasn't the best solution. So we had one team that was inside, if you go in between both of our buildings, the two Hugh buildings, so we could that way direct the traffic in, and they would drop there and then pull out of the parking lot. And then we also had the drop box, so it was on our facility, two different locations in order to move the traffic through. But we've had absentee ballots just as high as April 28th, and actually in 2018, the November of 2018 election saw by-mail ballots in this about the same volume, and we didn't see lines at the drop box. I think
the big thing to remember is we did in less than a month what we're doing in 3 months.
exactly.
So people are going to be getting their ballots, the bulk of people are going to be getting their ballots early enough not to do that. And we're going to be voting in the annex. So this whole area is going to be open.
And
They're not
people
going to be
vote-
pulling people in and out.
And people will be able to vote in person in their neighborhood again, too, so that should shrink that number, too.
Yeah.
Right.
It won't be, it's not an apples-to-apples comparison.
Great. It was such a time crunch on April 28th for all of us, for voters, for us, for the post office. We don't have that time crunch this election. We've got more time. So does the post office, so do the voters.
I guess what I was trying to drive at is, hopefully that's true, and we don't have that, this huge traffic problem out here that I'm thinking we could. But just as a precaution, have we made any attempt to coordinate with the Norwood Police Department on how we would handle traffic control if that became?
Yes, we have. We have plans to have 4 police officers here during actually the entire early voting period, and to help direct traffic and the flow of traffic. And then the property owner of this property and the adjacent property is also hiring 2 on their own officers to help. So we'll have a total of 6, and then we'll up that number even more on Election Day. We work with Norwood and the Sheriff's Office. Many times Norwood doesn't have the ability to fill all the shifts, so we start with them, and they're recruiting for those shifts now. And then if they can't recruit by early September, then we're forwarding it to the Sheriff's Office.
Okay. Just trying to think this through ahead of time, because I'm very concerned that we're going to have chaos on November 3rd, and the less of that we can make sure happens, the better.
Well, and then I'm always like, what if, so just making sure those areas where we know ahead of time that normally we have a high voter turnout when they go actually to the polls themselves, have we put together a plan so that there won't be long lines out of those buildings, so the voter doesn't have to wait?
We may see lines because of the social distancing that has to occur. So, whereas you might fit everyone inside during pre-COVID times, because they have to stand 6 feet apart, there may be lines outside. But looking at our allocations that we drafted to the board 2 weeks ago, our initial plan, we are able, even with the 6-foot social distancing, to have the same number of check-in stations and the same number of scanners and at every location. And we met recently, Sally and I, and staff with the Director of Public Health for the county, and we're working with their team and brought them in to see in those few locations where we could not fit our full complement of privacy booths, asked for recommendations, and they suggested that we purchase shields on the voting booths that extend upward another so many inches, and if we did that, then it would be okay to put the voting booths back to back because we would have the barrier there.
Okay.
So Shirley Fraser's department's been working on that, already have the shields designed and ordered, and we're down to just one location that we're still working on, that we were unable to fit the allocation that we would like to be able to provide. So we're down to just one location left for that,
Okay.
to work something out.
And the meetings that both you and Sally are going to be at the meetings with the Postal Services folks?
Yes, and our administrators.
Okay. And can you give us a report, give me a report before our next meeting?
Sure.
How that meeting goes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions? I do want to, before we Any other discussion regarding the planning?
No, nothing else. I think we can go on to certification. I was just looking to make sure we had the reports, the certification, the results. Oh, okay, great.
Okay,
While we've been meeting, the operations staff was conducting the official count, so I was just checking to
Okay.
make sure we had the certified results ready for you.
okay, and that's on the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to move on now to the certification results from August 4th, 2020 special election results.
I'll move certification. Do we need
Yeah, typically we distribute those to you.
oh, we're still waiting?
Mhm.
Do you have the results, Krista, from? Sorry.
Well, while she's doing that, I would just, so that for the sake of time, I'd like to oh, okay. All right. You have no results right now? Okay, all right. I'd like to read into the minutes or have this noted into the minutes. I received a letter here from our mayor, John Cranley, and it was sent here on July the 30th. And in the letter, he was indicating as the mayor that he was looking forward to working with the Secretary of State to talk about the whole issue around multiple drop box locations. So I just want to make a note that this is in the minutes, that he did indicate and was supportive of the multiple drop boxes and had been willing and is willing, but it's a kind of a mute subject now, but so we had support from the county commissioners and from the mayor as well. But I do think it's something that perhaps if we can't get done, I don't want it to be a dead issue, because I think it's something that we should look at for the future. So I don't want it to be a dead issue. And I don't understand, quite frankly, why it had to go before the Attorney General, but I'd like us to, as a matter of record, continue to look at that at some point. But let's get through the November the 3rd election first. So that will go into our minutes. Thank you. So now we're being issued the actual certification results.
All right, with this, Madam Chair, I'll move certification of the August 4th, 2020 special election.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? That motion carries, and thank you for do we need to read this into the minutes? Or this will serve as an appendix?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? We did do that, didn't we? Okay, that motion carries, thank you. And anything else?
I have nothing else, and I'm on a little bit of a time crunch.
Well, I want to thank the staff for the great work you're doing to help us get through this meeting, and the great work that you're going to be doing to get us through. And as we move toward November the 3rd, I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? None. None but the devil. The motion carries. The meeting has been officially adjourned.